Hello everybody! Today we're going to be talking about the season with the highest Rotten Tomato score, although that doesn't really mean anything, 1984. Now, me personally, I have a really weird relationship with 1984. 1984 came out at a time for me where this was only the second season that I actually was present for, like, while it was airing. I did get into American Horror Story while Cult was on air, but I did not watch that season live. I watched Apocalypse live, and then 1984 was the second season that I watched live. And let me just tell you, when I watched the season, I was so upset about the loss of Sarah and Evan. If you don't know, Sarah Paulson, Evan Peters, like, made this show. Obviously, the last like 7 or 8 seasons were basically about those two. The fact that they're not in this season was a huge issue in the fandom. A lot of people despised the fact that they didn't come back, and a lot of people were sympathetic because apparently both of them were like, yeah, we don't want to come back. And I feel like both of them thought that if they had just kept going, it was never going to stop for either of them, and they would have never been able to get any other work, which is unfortunate, but both of them still have their own Ryan Murphy TV shows that they're working on, so I don't know what that's about. American Horror Story did live on without Sarah and Evan. We have like 3 seasons now without them. They did both come back in the next season, which we will talk about in the next video. After that, no more. They're not in any other season after that. This was like the first season without the main girlies in it. The only person that's a part of the early seasons of American Horror Story in the main cast this season is Emma Roberts. Let me just tell you, a lot of people were upset about that because Emma is not necessarily like the best leading lady. Love her as Madison Montgomery, but as any other main character, like, it just doesn't really mesh, you know, and we'll see that later on with Delicate. But this, she was chosen to be the leading lady this season, and a lot of people despised that. A lot of people, she has her fans. This season, it's kind of lacking star power, if I'm being honest with you. That being said, do I think that this season revitalized American Horror Story a little bit? Yes, I do, because it was something so fresh for American Horror Story. American Horror Story had kind of fallen into like a really repetitive groove, and 1984 was like the first season since Roanoke that felt really original. Cult was still original, but 1984 was really fresh, and I think it still stands up today. It's not the best season by any means, but it did revitalize the show at a time where Sarah had left, Evan had left, Jessica's been gone for seasons at this point. Frances Conroy is not in this season, and she was in almost every single season. I think this is only like her second absence, which is kind of insane now because she hasn't been in a season in a while. I'm gonna stop rambling. Let's get on into the characters. Now, I want to address something really quick. I've seen a lot of people in my comment section criticizing me for how I introduce the characters in this series. There's a few people who get upset at me for like introducing the characters and a small little summary of like what they mean to the plot. Those people want me to introduce them as they get introduced. Personally, I don't see the merit in doing that because if I introduce them as they come along, you're just going to be confused as to why they're on the board if I don't introduce them at that moment. And secondly, I have a terrible memory. So if I don't introduce you to everybody in a very brief summary in the beginning where I don't even reveal many things about their character, then I'm going to forget to do that later on. So first we have Brooke Thompson, as I stated earlier, played by Emma Roberts. Now, Emma Roberts, like I said before, she is a good actress for a certain type of role. She doesn't really play like the best type of role that is best for her. She is very much giving goody two-shoes this season, which is the complete opposite from Madison Montgomery. Let me just tell you right now. She has her fans. She has her fans for sure. Brooke Thompson has her fans. But personally, she's kind of like bottom tier Emma Roberts character, if I'm being honest with myself. She's okay. She's okay. I just don't think she's convincing as like the goody two-shoes. She's new to Los Angeles. By the way, the premise to this season is a group of Los Angeles teenagers go to this summer camp as counselors. So it's giving very much like 80s slasher vibes. This is what the season is about. It's a slasher. So the counselors all go, and these counselors basically recruit Brooke into their group like the day before they leave. So she's very new, but she's very much giving goody two-shoes. So that's just a little bit of context about her. Next, we have Montana Duke. She is an aerobics instructor, and by the way, these people are like college age. So we have to assume that she's in college, she's in college, he's in college, and these two are in college. These are our main college girlies. They are the counselors. Montana's basically just like your standard 80s girly. She's just a standard 80s girly. I don't really have much else to say about her because a lot of the stuff about her character will get spoiled later, and I don't want to spoil it now. Next, we have Xavier Plimpton. I don't know how to say his last name. Xavier. We're going to call him Xavier. He doesn't really eat as much as you think he would. I mean, in my opinion. Actor Cody Fern absolutely slayed the entire Apocalypse season, although what they ended up doing to Michael's character was fucking stupid. And in the most anticlimactic way possible, Mallory hits Michael with her car about 17 times, and that somehow is enough to kill him. So you're meaning to tell me, from an acting standpoint, he's not really slaying as much as he did in Apocalypse. But Xavier, I don't know if he's gay, I don't know if he's straight. It's kind of left open-ended. We learned in like episode 2 that he has a secret past of being a gay adult actor, and it's coming back to haunt him. Next, we have Chet Clancy. Now, Chet is played by Gus Kentworthy. He's some Olympian or something. I don't know. Worst actor in this season, let me just tell you. Also, apparently there was a rumor that these two were supposed to be dating this season, but like there's like absolutely no romantic chemistry between them, and there's no indication that they were ever going to date. So they clearly abandoned that idea once they realized how limited his acting ability was. Next, we have Ray Powell. Ray is supposed to be like what Chet was for Brooke early on in production. They kind of realized, well, Chet isn't going to work for a romantic interest, and Xavier is either gay or we just don't know what to do with him. So these two can't be together. So, and we don't want to have a lesbian couple on our hands, which that is teased and kind of queer baiting a little bit. So they kind of just were like, oh, Ray. Now, Ray has some dark secrets as well in his past, and we're going to get into that. But let's just say there are some things from his college hazing days that are going to come back to bite him. Next, we have Nurse Rita. One thing about 1984, there's just so many character reveals. There is so much I'm holding back on telling you about all the girlies. There's specific reasons for that because there's just so many character switches and character reveals that we will get to. But all you need to know is that this is Nurse Rita, and she is the nurse for the camp. Next, we have Mother of all mothers, Leslie Grossman, who is playing Margaret Booth. Now, Margaret Booth is a former camp counselor herself, and she is revealed in the first episode, bought the camp for a very specific reason, which we will get into later. Next, we have Trevor. Now, Trevor is, I don't know why he's in this season, if I'm being honest with you, I don't. Basically, the cast wasn't stacked enough, so they were like, let's bring in Matthew Morrison. He's from Glee, like, he'll make this season great. No, so he doesn't add anything to the plot. He's just there. And his only character trait is that he is a big... That's just the unfortunate thing that he's settled with this season. Oh my gosh, and then we have Benjamin Richter. He's the big bad of this season. He is the big serial killer that everybody is all afraid of. And finally, controversially, Richard Ramirez. Now, having Richard Ramirez in this season it's not good. It's really not good. And Ryan Murphy continuously does this thing where he adds real people into this show, and sometimes it works, sometimes it does not work, and it blows up in the season's face. I would say seasons where it works are Coven with Marie Laveau and Delphine, and that's about it. Hotel was terrible. The fact that they added all of those random ass serial killers in. What was the reason? And this season, why is he a main character? What is the, I don't know why he just insisted on adding a real life serial killer to this season, which already has one confirmed serial killer. The actor does an awful job, like a terrible job. He's not even a good actor, let alone his portrayal of Richard Ramirez. It's also not written well. Like, the fact that he is sexualized beyond compare is, it's one of my least favorite parts of this season, if I'm being honest with you. So yeah, those are all the main characters. I'm really gonna refrain speaking about him. So first, for the side characters, we have Courtney, who is a mystery character that I will get to explaining later because it actually does spoil a lot. But just know that he is played by icon Leslie Jordan, and this would be his final appearance in this show before he sadly passed away. So let's have a little moment, a tip of the hat for Leslie Jordan. You will be missed so much. Next, we have a character called Bruce. Now, Bruce is a hitchhiker that we will meet later on in the season. He is played by Dylan McDermott, who obviously reprised his role as Ben in the season previous. So it's a nice little cameo for him to play another different character. Next we have Stacey. Now Stacey, she's a reporter, and we will meet her later on in the season as well. A lot of these characters down here are much later on. Next we have Chef Birdie. Now Birdie works at the camp that the girlies are counselors at. She is the chef, if you couldn't tell by her name. This is Jonas. Now Jonas is somebody that the girlies find in the woods in episode 1, and we will get into what that means later. This is Lavinia. She is played by Mother of the Century Lily Rabe, and this is the only, along with Dylan McDermott, this is the only other appearance by an actor who was in like the original few seasons. Next we have Karen. Karen is a doctor for the Red Meadows Asylum where Benjamin Richter is being kept in the present day. And finally we have a mystery character that Finn Wittrock is playing, and I will not tell you the name until later, but yeah, that's everybody in the cast. So episode 1 of 1984 begins on July 28th, 1970. We see 3 camp counselors, and they are trying to have a threesome with the kids asleep right next door. And these 3 counselors are interrupted when a mysterious man in a janitor's outfit kills all 3 of them. And they hear his keys jingling in the background. And this man is none other than Mr. Jingles, aka Benjamin Richter. We then jump down to day 1, July 27th, 1984. We see the 5 main girlies. All these girlies are at an aerobics class. This one is not being taught by Montana, but we do know that she is an instructor on the side. Brooke is approached by Montana in the showers, which is a little creepy. We then see Xavier and the other 2 guys meeting up with the 2 girls outside the class, and Xavier tells his friend group, his new friend group, that he was hired as a camp counselor for the summer. We hear them talking about the Night Stalker and how it's not safe to be in Los Angeles at this time, yada yada yada, whatever. Anyway, he gets these 4 to agree to be his other camp counselors because they are really short at the camp that he's going to. We see Brooke at her apartment, and I think I forgot to mention this, but when they were talking about the Night Stalker, she randomly blurts out the fact that serial killers are more likely to break in through open windows. And what does Girly do? She leaves her fucking window open at her apartment. And the Night Stalker actually breaks in, breaks in, and attacks her, and then she threatens to call the cops, and he runs away. The next morning, it is now day 2, July 28th. Brooke agrees to join the rest of the girlies on the summer camp outing. We see they are all in Xavier's van that he's driving out. Ray is doing coke, and so is Montana. And we learn that Chet was supposed to be at the Olympics this year, which are happening this weekend, by the way. July 28th, 1984. This was like the weekend the Olympics was happening. But he was rejected because they found drugs in his system, so he ends up just doing coke on the bus anyway because there's no hope for him at this point. And while they're on the road, they run into this man named Jonas, and Jonas is a little confused. He doesn't know what the fuck's going on. He doesn't know where he is. So they take him with them and then arrive at camp. Shortly after, they meet Margaret Booth, who is the new owner of the camp and has decided to reopen it after years and years of it being closed, as well as the activities director, Trevor, who arrives a little bit later. We also see Nurse Rita, who is checking in on Jonas, and later that night, they're all at the campfire, and they are smoking a little bit of weed when she arrives, and Margaret Booth is God's greatest soldier. We learn that she is a little bit more of a prude, and she's very anti-sex, which, by the way, babes, this is the 80s, so sex was everywhere. She's anti-sex, anti-drug, she's very religious. And then, at the campfire, Rita tells the girlies about the, quote, deadliest camp massacre that ever existed, and that would be the one that happened 14 years ago with Benjamin at this very summer camp. This is where it's revealed that in around September of 1970, Benjamin was locked up in Red Meadows Asylum because she testified against him. Meanwhile, at Red Meadows Asylum, we see him escaping from his room after faking his suicide and then attacking the guards. He then pushes some random fuck-ass button that's just on the wall to release all the girlies from their respective rooms, and that is how he's able to make his clean escape. We see Benjamin kill a car mechanic, who I didn't put on the board because he's not that important. Benjamin arrives to Camp Redwood later that night, and he chases Brooke through the woods. Brooke has been found. This would be her second interaction with a serial killer within like a day, which is kind of insane. Like, she's kind of just a magnet. She makes it to the cabin and finds the girlies and tells them of her traumatic experience. She's got mud all over her body, all over her new clean clothes. I also forgot to mention Benjamin kills the hiker Jonas while in the infirmary, which that is why Brooke is running away, because she sees that happen. And when the girlies all go to investigate the hiker, they realize that he's gone and there was no dead body at all, and Brooke is probably making this up, babes. That's basically where we leave episode 1. We do also see Richard Ramirez arrive at the camp. So episode 2 begins where episode 1 ended off, and it's still July 28th, the night of July 28th, very late at night. We see the doctor from Red Meadows Asylum, Dr. Karen Hopple. She arrives here at Camp Redwood to tell Margaret about the fact that Benjamin has escaped the asylum. And Margaret is so unfazed by this. She is the queen of being unbothered. She's like, let him come. I have a pistol. So she turns her away and Karen leaves, only to be found by Benjamin right outside camp. Aww. And, you know, he does kill her because she kept him locked up for 14 years. Brooke is being consoled by Montana, and Brooke decides to reveal a crucial piece of her backstory that I just needed to know. We go back a whole year. It is July 2nd, 1983. Brooke is engaged to a guy named Joey. They are about to get married. However, Joey decides that he'd rather have a red wedding than a white one. Basically, he accuses her of sleeping with his best friend, who is his best man at this wedding, so he kills his best friend and then kills himself. Back to the present day, we see Xavier is confronted by someone named Blake, who I have neglected to put on the board. But this guy Blake basically tries to get Xavier to come back and do a couple more adult films because he has a past of having to be a sex worker in order to get his foot in the door for acting. Xavier basically gets Blake to use Trevor instead of him because we all know that it was established that his only character trait is that he has a big... We then see this guy Blake watching Trevor in the shower. Blake doesn't stick around for too long though, because Benjamin arrives and sticks like a spike through his eyeball. Through the peeky hole. Brooke then arrives to find the dead body of Hopple, and this is where Ramirez shows up and tries to attack her because he wants revenge because he wasn't able to get her a few nights back. And then, mysteriously, Jonas shows up. He shows up and gets in Ramirez's way, and Ramirez just fucking kills him right then and there, only for him to show up again. So this basically reveals that this camp has spirits. We're doing this again. We then see Richard confronting Margaret, and Margaret's just like, yeah, I'm not scared of you, babes. And she reveals that Jonas died in 1970. Margaret makes a deal with Richard. She wants him to kill Benjamin in exchange for her to find out everything that there is to know about Jonas. We then see all the girlies find the dead body of Blake, and basically this is when the camp, the other camp counselors, I should say, begin to realize that there might be a killer on the loose. The girlies get into Xavier's van, however, Rita jumps in front of their van and they crash into a tree. We see Brooke, Ray, Chet, and Rita heading to the infirmary to get her keys for her car. Meanwhile, Trevor, Montana, and Xavier head to the cabins to go get Trevor's keys to his motorcycle. Both groups are locked in their respective cabins by two separate serial killers, and it is unknown which girly is trapping which girlies, and that is where episode 2 ends. All right, so we are finally on day 3. It is now July 29th, 1984. If you couldn't tell, this is more than one episode's worth of plot. There's just going to be quite a lot that happens in the next couple episodes. This episode picks up right where the last one left off. We find out that Richard Ramirez is the one that was banging on the door of Brooke. However, Chet and Ray fall into a trap where there's a bunch of spikes in the ground, so Chet is impaled. So Ray decides to take this time to divulge an interesting piece of information. We learn that on September 25th, 1983, Ray was hazing and he accidentally got one of the pledges so drunk that the pledge actually fell down the stairs and died. So, to cover this up, Ray takes him out to this cliff in a car and has him just free fall. But then at the last minute, he realizes that the guy is still alive. So he tries to save him, however, the guy falls and dies. And it's revealed that he actually ended up coming to this camp to try and hide from the police because he's on the run. Chet judges Ray for this, and so Ray gets out of the pit and leaves him there. We see Brooke and Rita arriving at her car, and this is where it's revealed that Rita is evil, babes. She's evil. She takes a horse tranquilizer and doses Brooke and reveals that she's not even a nurse at all. We then get a random ass flashback, and girl, this is kind of where the season gets a little annoying for me. I don't really like this part of the season. So we see it is July 21st, 1984. We see Donna, not Rita, her name is Donna. She visits Benjamin Richter. We learn that she is a psychiatrist, and she basically says that she has a particular interest in him and claims that Benjamin is not evil and that she would like to study him in his own little playground where he can go around and kill people. She's the one that helped him break out of the Red Meadows Asylum and got him here in the first place, which seems like an odd reveal to drop in only episode 3. Back to the present day, we see Xavier, Trevor, and Montana. They discover that the assailant that was trapping them in wasn't even Jingles at all, and it was impersonators of Jingles, which is a nice callback to the bloody face impersonators of Asylum fame. However, then the real Benjamin arrives and sets the record straight that he is at this camp, so he kills the impersonators. We then see Xavier and Trevor go to rescue Chet in the pit. Then Ray and Montana head for Brooke and Rita. However, they discover that they are missing, and they have absolutely no idea that Miss Girl is an evil psychologist studying a serial killer. This is where Richard Ramirez arrives and scares the fuck out of Chet. So he runs away and steals Trevor's motorcycle. He almost makes it out of the camp. However, on his way out, he is decapitated by Benjamin. Ow. So Ray dies. And at the end of the episode, we see that Montana knows Richard Ramirez and they begin making out. Oh, another character reveal. Oh my gosh. This is one of the only things about this season that I don't like, is that everyone is evil. Like, they just reveal everybody is like got something. So episode 4 opens with a flashback to July 25th, 1984, and this is where Richard Ramirez walks in on this aerobics class. Some guy badmouths her, and Richard kills this guy for Montana, even though he doesn't fucking know her. And then she says that that's super sexy. She confides in Richard that she has an arch nemesis who killed her brother. And this is where it's revealed that her arch nemesis is none other than Brooke. So Brooke's ex-fiance's best friend was Montana, and they just somehow did not even know each other. Basically, the whole reason why Richard attacked Brooke was to get revenge on what Brooke inadvertently let happen, and that would be the death of Montana's brother. It's a terrible twist, by the way. We see Xavier try to warn Birdie, who is making sandwiches, about the killers that are in camp. And before he can even get her to leave, Benjamin arrives and Xavier hides. She makes him a sandwich and tries to stay on his good side. However, Benjamin sees right through this facade and he locks Xavier in an oven, kills Birdie. So Xavier is rescued by Birdie after Benjamin leaves, and Birdie begs for mercy from Xavier, who stabs and kills her. We see Brooke running in the forest because she has escaped from Donna, and she is caught in a net, ripe for the picking for Benjamin, so that Donna can study how this whole serial killing thing works. We then see Montana find Brooke in the net, and Montana's still pretending to be Brooke's friend, by the way. She leads Ramirez to Brooke, and at the same time, he arrives, and these two have an epic showdown. And at the same time, Donna is found by Montana, and these two get in a tussle because both of them want Brooke to die, and Brooke is just swinging there in the net watching her two conspirators fighting as well. I don't think that sentence made sense, but we see Montana knock Donna out, and that is when Benjamin kills Ramirez, which she has to watch happen, so she runs away. This is when Benjamin makes it to Margaret's cabin, and he confronts her, and this is where we learn the big T. The big T. It was hinted at in like episode 2, but we get the reveal that Margaret did not only just survive the murders from 1970, she committed them and then blamed it on Jingles. So that first scene that we saw all the way back in 1970, that didn't happen. It was not Jingles, it was her. That twist is actually just okay. It's actually not as bad as the whole like Montana and Donna twists. I just feel like they tried to cram so many different character turns in like 2 or 3 episodes. We then see Margaret successfully take down Benjamin. He is shot, and when Trevor arrives, he celebrates that he is finally dead. However, Margaret, because she is a psychopath, she always needs to do more harm, so she stabs Trevor, and Trevor lies there slowly bleeding out. Then when she turns around to see if Benjamin is still there, he's not. He's escaped. And when the girlies all arrive, they find out that Blake's car, which was going to be their form of escape, is on fire. And this is because of Margaret, and that is where episode 4 ends. So episode 5 opens on June 26th, 1980. We see Donna has not yet started her serial killer obsession. She basically is stalking her dad and finds out that her dad is indeed a serial killer. And this is what starts her whole fascination for the thing. And she watches as her dad commits his last kill, which would be himself. We then skip back. It is again, still, day 3, July 29th. We've been on this for 3 episodes at this point. I think we get the gist. It's the same early morning time period. Margaret and Chet are on a boat to go find help on the other side of camp. This is where Margaret incapacitates Chet, lets him slowly drown in the lake. We then see Brooke finding Ray. He was decapitated in like episode 3. The two then go hide in the cafeteria, and then they have sex. Fucked a dead boy. Ooh. Then she goes to the fridge and finds his severed head, which Benjamin just so happened to put in the fridge. He also is a little bit shook by this because he doesn't remember dying. We then see Montana finding Brooke. Montana then finally confesses her hatred to Brooke, and that's when they decide to duel it out. Oh, I also forgot to mention, Xavier tries to attack Donna because this is all Donna's fault. He was burnt to a crisp because she let Benjamin out. This is when Xavier finds Benjamin about to kill Margaret at the shooting range, and he shoots a bunch of arrows into the chest of Benjamin. And, you know, for his troubles, he is killed by Margaret. Richard Ramirez is brought back to life by Satan because, as we know, he was a famous Satanist. And we see it's finally the next morning. Brooke and Montana are still fighting. We see Brooke finally grab a knife, and she is able to kill Montana. So Montana dies, and just as she pulls the knife out of Montana's stomach, do you want to know who arrives? The kids. The kids have finally arrived at their planned field trip, and they all start screaming their heads off. That is when Brooke is arrested. Margaret is again the sole survivor. Everyone else is dead. Technically, Trevor will later be found to be in a coma, and Donna also escapes, but she isn't really reported on being there because, as we know, she went under an alias. Richard and Benjamin obviously were resurrected by Satan, and they ride off into the sunset together, now besties. And Margaret has accused Brooke of killing all the girlies at the camp. I honestly really wish that they would have ended the season here because the next couple of episodes, well, don't add up to the first 5. The first 5 episodes take place within basically a whole night. On to episode 6, which is the 100th episode of this series. Can you believe I am about to recap the 100th episode? Now, you're probably wondering to yourself, how the fuck are they going to continue this story when everybody's dead, Brooke is in jail, and the 3 girlies that were actually responsible for it are either on the run or faking being victims still. Episode 100 is not one of my favorite episodes. I really think it drags a little bit. I don't understand why they didn't just end it at episode 5 or drag it out, but just know that there's going to be a colossal time jump after this episode. We see it is August 31st, 1985. It's a whole year later. We see that these two have been working together, and Benjamin he wants to slow down and he wants to have a family and stop this whole like murder crime spree situation that he has going on with Richard Ramirez. He turns Richard in. Ooh, that's the big T right there. But then Benjamin then moves and tries to make a life of his own. We then skip to October 21st, 1989, 5 years after the original events took place. We see that Margaret Booth has basically profited off of this whole 2-time survivor situation, and she owns a bunch of different properties now. We see that she owns Briarcliff Manor, Spawn Ranch, and a couple of other haunted spaces in the United States. We see a flashback to March 21st, 1985. So this is just a year after the whole Camp Massacre back in 1984. Trevor is in a coma and he finally wakes up. He is visited by Margaret. Basically, Margaret offers to marry Trevor, and Trevor's like, I know that you're the one that fucking killed everybody, bitch. You tried to kill me. He takes her offer. He's gonna end up living a very rich lifestyle with Margaret because she owns a bunch of property. So yeah, he agrees to marry her. We jump back to the present day and we meet Courtney, who is Margaret's assistant. I held back that information because I didn't want that to get spoiled. But yes, Courtney, played by Leslie Jordan, is Margaret's assistant. He tells her that Brooke Thompson, yes, the notorious Brooke serial killer from the Camp Redwood killings, is about to be killed by lethal injection. Oh my gosh, back at Camp Redwood, we see this flop that we haven't met before. I don't remember his name, but he's taking pictures and we see the spirit of Montana confront him. She, along with Xavier, kill this guy and his girlfriend. Oh, also, apparently in the afterlife, Montana and Xavier have begun seeing each other and they are now together, I guess. We see Margaret and her team arrive at the summer camp and find the dead bodies, and they decide to use this recent buzz around this kill to host like this food and music festival to bring in a bunch of people who are obsessed with 80s rock and murderers and food and murderers. We then skip down to the next day. It is October 22nd, 1989. We then catch up with Brooke in jail, and she is getting ready to get killed, basically. And from the cell next to hers, Richard Ramirez offers her an escape from that if she accepts Satan as her Lord and Savior, something that she refuses to do. Margaret and Trevor watch as Brooke is lethally injected. Brooke is killed, right then and there. However, as Margaret, Trevor, and the rest of the girlies leave, it is revealed that Donna was the one that injected her. She was disguised. Basically, it was like a horse tranquilizer. It didn't actually kill her. So she gives her adrenaline, wakes her up, and then breaks her out of prison. We see Benjamin Richter has begun a life with his new family. He has a baby boy named Bobby and a wife named Lorraine. So Richard somehow is able to persuade the guard at his cell to let him out. So Richard escapes jail, and the first person that he confronts is Benjamin. He kills Benjamin's new wife, Lorraine, and then leaves his new son, Bobby, in a pool of his mother's blood for Benjamin to discover when he gets home. Benjamin decides that he needs to go and kill Richard Ramirez for good at the food and musical festival. We see Benjamin giving his son, Bobby, up to Lorraine's sister, and that's basically where episode 6 ends. One of my my least favorite episodes of this season. It's probably actually my least favorite. It's just uninteresting in my opinion, and I feel as though they just tried to continue the story when the story was already over. Alright, so episode 7 is probably one of my favorite episodes this season. It opens with a flashback to July 16th, 1948. We see that Camp Redwood is not called Camp Redwood at the time, it's called Camp Golden Star. We see Queen Lily Rabe appears in this season as Lavinia Richter, who just so happens to be the mom of Benjamin Richter. Oh my gosh, we see baby Benjamin, and he has a little brother named Bobby. We see that Benjamin's brother Bobby is killed in a boating accident. This causes Lavinia, the mother, to go absolute crazy, and she kills everybody on this campsite besides her son, who survives because he kills Lavinia. Oh, and it's a tearful goodbye. It is. Lavinia dies, and that would be the first of 3 massacres here at this campsite. We then jump to October 29th, 1989. It's a week after the last episode left off. We see that Benjamin has arrived at Camp Redwood for the musical fest that's happening in just a few days. Benjamin confronts his mother. Benjamin's mom, Lavinia, basically reveals that she was the one that got Margaret to kill the girlies in the camp in 1970, back at the second massacre here at this camp, by whispering into her ear. She's basically did this to get back at Benjamin for letting Bobby die back in the 40s. Lavinia tells Benjamin that he needs to kill himself in order to prevent Richard from doing it, so that he can sneak up on Richard when Richard isn't looking. Because obviously if Benjamin is a ghost, he has the element of surprise. We then see Benjamin does commit suicide. Oh my gosh, then we see Trevor and Margaret have arrived at the camp to begin setting up the festival. Trevor reunites with Montana, which they didn't even really have a big thing. They just like made out once, and all of a sudden they're acting like the love of each other's life. So there's that. Then we see certain musical acts arrive here for the musical festival, such as Kaja Gugu. Because Richard Ramirez in real life was such a big fan of Billy Idol, he despises this like pop music, so he kills Kaja Gugu. Right then and there. We catch up with Brooke and Donna, who have been living in a hotel. We see them try to get back to some kind of normalcy after she's been in jail for 5 years and the world now believes that she's dead. They go to an ice skating rink where they are confronted by this man named Bruce. He begs for them to take him to the camp for this festival. While they're on the way there, he reveals himself as the Headlights Killer, which we've heard absolutely nothing of until this episode. Basically just another excuse to throw another serial killer in there. He kills women on the side of the road and takes their cars and goes state to state. Before he can kill the girlies, they outsmart him, and Brooke cuts his thumbs off so that he'll never be able to hitchhike again. And that's basically where the episode ends. Alright, so we jump down to the next day. It is October 30th, 1989. The spirit of Benjamin confronts Richard, who has arrived here for the music festival. However, Bruce arrives to break up the fight. Now, how Bruce ended up in the music festival, I have no idea. Benjamin disappears, and we see Bruce, who is a fan of Richard Ramirez's work, recognizes him, basically asks to be his sidekick. Margaret finds them and decides to join them as well, so that can't be good. Basically, all 3 of the serial killers come up with a plan to kill all of the musicians that show up here at this music festival, which will basically turn it to the biggest music memorial ever, which is not a bad plan. However, who are you going to pin it on? It's here that we see Brooke and Donna are confronted by this reporter named Stacy, and Stacy basically recognizes Brooke and is like, I know that you're not dead. Like, I know that you escaped prison, and I know that you, Donna, were at the summer camp as well in 1984. Basically, she blackmails them for as much information on the camp as possible because she wants to run a story on who the real killer was, I guess. And this is where Brooke tries to kill Stacy to keep her mouth shut. However, Donna stops her, and this is when Stacy is found by Margaret. So Margaret kills Stacy, and we don't see Stacy again, unfortunately. So sad for Stacy. We then see that Lavinia saves Benjamin from the dead counselors. She keeps him in like a secret area of the camp where she likes to reside, and it is revealed that the spirit of his brother, Bobby, has come out of hiding. This is where he gives up revenge on Ramirez and decides to stay with his dead mom and dead brother. And that is where the penultimate episode ends. Alright, we finally made it to the finale of season 9, 1984. I'm gonna go in chronological order because that's just the easiest way for me to process what happened. There's just a lot. There's just a lot to get into, so let's go ahead and get into it. The day after the last episode left off, it is now Halloween night, October 31st, 1989. Trevor begins sending people away and blocking people from entering the camp. We then see Margaret shooting him outside the campgrounds, so basically, if he dies out there, he's not going to be able to come back as the ghost. We then see Brooke arrive, and she is just about ready. She's about ready to confront Margaret herself, and she ends up dragging Trevor into the campgrounds so that Trevor and Montana can live happily ever after. Basically, Montana and Trevor get everybody in camp to help out with killing Margaret, Richard, and Bruce. Bruce is killed by Trevor outside a campground. He basically pushes his body over the line, so Bruce won't be coming back as a ghost. Then here comes a giant plot hole in this season. All the ghosts in camp, which there's just so many more than I actually put on the board, but there are some counselors from the 40s, some counselors from the 70s, some counselors that we didn't even really meet. Everyone in camp, basically, decides to kill Richard Ramirez. Yeah, in real life, Richard Ramirez is alive. So Richard Ramirez is constantly resurrecting himself from 1989 onward. Everyone in camp is taking turns watching him before he resurrects so that they can kill him right as he resurrects so that he can't ever leave camp. Which this doesn't make any fucking sense because in real life and in the show confirmed, Richard Ramirez is alive until 2013. It's confirmed in Hotel that he was alive until 2013 and then he died in his jail cell, which is exactly what happened in real life. So I don't know how any of this makes sense. Ryan Murphy says that this season takes place in an alternate universe. Also doesn't make sense because we know that Margaret literally owns Briarcliff Manor from Asylum, which is tied to Hotel through other various connections. How is this season in an alternate universe? I don't understand. I think it's just a plot hole. Brooke finally attacks Margaret, and Margaret ends up returning the favor and shooting Brooke in the stomach. All the girlies in camp attack Margaret, and they finally kill her by putting her through a wood chipper and shooting her remains over the campground line so that she can't come back as a ghost. We see Ray finding the almost dead body of Brooke. She's barely hanging on. He carries her to the campground line, and she walks out before collapsing. We're left kind of unsure about her fate. Then we skip down to September 27th, 2019. We see this man, played by Finn Wittrock, and his name is Bobby Richter. That would be Benjamin's son. He arrives at Camp Redwood and meets Montana and Trevor. They basically warn him about everything and say that he needs to get out of this camp because Richard Ramirez is still being killed and resurrected to this day by the spirits in the camp. Obviously, Richard Ramirez wants nothing more than to kill the spawn of Benjamin Richter, who did him dirty. We see that Richard is temporarily able to escape because for some reason Chet and Birdie are about to get down and dirty, and this is where Richard is able to escape from them, and he finds Bobby and attacks him before the rest of the girlies in the camp stop Richard again and kill him. So then the next day, it is September 28th, Bobby has been directed to Donna Chambers, who works at the Red Meadows Asylum, babes. And he asks for information on the whole camp, the whole situation, his dad, everything that happened in the 80s. Bobby thanks her for sending him money once a month. And Donna's like, I did not fucking send you any money. What are you talking about? And he's like, well, if you didn't send me any money and the ghosts didn't send me any money, then who the fuck sent me money? So Bobby and Donna find out that Brooke is still alive and she is living in Oregon in a quaint little town where she can keep her head down. We see she does not look a day over 30. She is quite young looking still, which is a bit of a plot hole. But yeah, she basically tells the story about how she survived Halloween 1989. That's where we leave Brooke's story this season. It's a really weak ending to her character, if I'm being honest with you. There's no reveal, nothing really, it's just that she got out alive. We then see Bobby return to camp one last time to see his father, and he has never met his father, keep in mind, except for when he was a baby. Benjamin's brother Bobby, and Lavinia finally get to meet Bobby. It's a nice little scene, it's a nice little ending, but I do think it was literally like shoehorned in at the very end. Especially this whole episode kind of feels a little shoehorned in because we don't really get to see any of the action until like the middle point of the episode. And in the final scene, we see Bobby saying goodbye to his dad, Benjamin, before he walks off into the sunset. And that is the end of American Horror Story 1984. I gotta tell you, this season, good in the first half. It's a really good, like, very good change of pace for American Horror Story, in my opinion at least. However, after the halfway point, it definitely does not need to be 9 episodes. I think it could have just been good to stand alone as 5, maybe with like an additional finale at the end. But yeah, I really did not enjoy the final 4 episodes as much as I enjoyed the first 5. I think they drag. They're a little bit pointless because the music festival massacre thing didn't even really happen. It's teased that Brooke died, but she didn't really die. All the ghosts are dead, but it's purgatory, so they're technically still able to do everything that a living person would be able to do. It doesn't feel like anyone's death here has a whole lot of stakes, and that is a big criticism of this season. Hotel, Murder House, Roanoke, at least the ghosts feel like they're ghosts. Like in this season, they're essentially allowed to still have sex. They're allowed to do a bunch of different other things. They just can't leave the premises, which feels a little bit weak. Kind of feels like a way for the writers to be like, oh, they're dead, but oh, they can still come back and haunt you and do this stuff. Like it doesn't really matter. They're still basically alive. I like some of the characters. I think in particular, Margaret Booth is just the standout here. Montana is also really good. I just don't like her storyline with Richard. I really like the redemption arc that they gave Benjamin. I think it actually holds up and it's one of the better parts of this season. I also like Donna. However, the reveal of her being evil in like episode 3 was so rushed in my opinion. I like Lavinia. I guess Finn Wittrock as Bobby is good too. Other than that, those are really the only standouts. And in a season that is lacking star power, it's kind of unfortunate a little bit. I think if they had had maybe like 1 or 2 more like big names, it could have made this season really good. And then also, if the last 4 episodes were taken out, that would also have made it pretty good. Yeah, there's a lot to love here, but also a lot I kind of just don't really like that much. Yeah, 1984 is a pretty middle of the road season. I wouldn't call it mid. I wouldn't call it amazing. It's definitely good. I'm just gonna say it's a good season. This season definitely is much better than Apocalypse, slightly better than Roanoke, and on par with Cult. It definitely is one of the better seasons of the later crop, which are very hit or miss. That has been my recap of American Horror Story 1984. I really hope you enjoyed this one. I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!